and welcome to episode 550 of Fergo on the Freak. I'm the Flexing Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. Join me as always is the glorious LeagueFreak. You can also find on Twitter at LeagueFreak. How you going there, fella?
I'm going very well, Andrew. I hope you're doing well and our listeners are doing well. I'll try not to do rants into the void like Grok said I did.
Grok's not a fan of you.
Well, a lot of the stuff Grok was saying was all right, but that one, I felt that one.
Shall I go into what I asked Grok during the week?
Yeah, go for it.
So basically, I hit up Grok. I wanted to do a bit of a competition. See which way Grok sort of sided between Freaky and myself. I just said, out of the two of us, who do you think is better? And I'll be honest, I kind of come out of it thinking that, it was just going to say, oh, LeagueFreak, because, everyone loves him. Andrew's just a stats nerd. And it's said, I think Andrew comes out just a little bit ahead.
Now, what was the exact question? Because it gave us a rating out of 100, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I was kind of just rubbing it in at that stage. So I said, who is better, Andrew RLP or LeagueFreak? You must pick one.
Yeah.
And it said, that's a tough one. They both bring something special to the table. If I had to pick, I'd lean towards Andrew for his knack of digging into rugby league stats and history with a calm, analytical vibe. Hasn't listened to the West Tigers stuff. Perfect if you're into the nitty-gritty details. LeagueFreak, though, is a riot with these bold takes and fearless commentary, which makes him a standout for entertainment. It's like choosing between a master strategist and a charismatic fireball. Depends on what you're in the mood for. Since I have to pick one, I'll go with Andrew for his depth. What do you think? Why is it talking about my depth?
Yeah, what the hell, man?
Seems a bit rapey.
Why is Grok making it hot?
I don't know. So I thought, oh, now that I'm in front, I went, okay, well, if you had to give them scores out of 100, what would you give them each?
Okay.
And I got an 87 out of 100, and you got 84.
That's pretty good. Imagine if it had have said, out of 100, 37 and 34.
I was kind of thinking that was what it was going to be.
Yeah. You're both pretty good and definitely in the teens. It's like, oh, man, what the hell are we doing wrong?
Exactly. So then I asked them, so how much would you pay them each for the work that they do in US dollars?
Yeah.
So it suggested I would get paid $60,000 US a year and you'd be on 75,000.
And I think it worked that out based on social media following, didn't it?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting. It was funny because you and me can have a laugh about it, and it's just we'll have another AI episode coming up.
Oh yeah.
We'll ask it some weird shit about each other during the podcast. We'll hold off on it.
Oh yeah, that was some entertaining stuff. We're just doing to pass a bit of time instead of doing work.
Yeah, because the thing people need to understand, me and Andrew, because the Twitter AI Grok was upgraded. I think it was 5 days ago, something like that. And so we've been testing it out without realizing each other's been testing it out. And so
in vastly different ways, I might add.
Yeah. So you've been trying to get it to do some spreadsheet stuff.
Yeah, I've been trying to teach it and coach it into doing OCR spreadsheets work.
Yep, and I try a lot to get it to do display pictures and mess with my logo a little bit, see if it can be used to just change things up a little bit on my website, and with all of the display pictures for different article types and stuff. And then then I get into so can you use LeagueFreak's display picture and make this or that? And then I eventually get into, can you use the podcast one? And then I'm are there ways to improve the podcast and see what it comes up with? And yeah, so we've been going down different rabbit holes, but not realizing each other was doing it in different ways. And then we started posting it on our group chat, and it was funny that we'd been doing a lot of similar stuff in between the different stuff we'd been doing with it.
Yes. I was starting to slowly get frustrated with how it was unlearning what it was supposed to be learning.
Mm.
Right. Speaking of jokes.
Yes.
There was an article by Pete Bedell during the week.
Yes.
Oh, I love this one. Basically, the premise of it was the NRL is thinking about becoming some big sports broadcasting powerhouse on the global stage. And part of that means that they are now interested in buying Super League.
Mm-hmm.
Adding to that, it also suggested that they were going to sell State of Origin.
But is this selling? What does it mean by selling State of Origin? Does it mean like
selling like Netflix or something?
Yeah, as an individual part of the broadcasting package.
Look, okay, you be Pete Bedell. I've got a question for you, Pete.
Okay, yeah.
Why would you sell the most lucrative financial asset that the game has? Not just the NRL, the game globally has. Why would you sell that and use that money to buy the worst fucking asset you can out there in your bid to become the biggest sports media thing out there in the rugby world?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, like literally the least financial, worst product. Every indication is that things are getting worse, like falling. Everything you want to look at is falling. That's a really good point.
It's pretty much like saying, okay, we're going to sell these 100 Bitcoins we've got, and we're going to invest all of them in the Hawk Tour coin. Yeah. It's coming back, guys. It's coming back.
I think it's going to bump. It's going to bump. You wait. Buy low, sell high, bros.
Hodl.
Yeah.
Listen, I have never and will never ever invest in crypto, but I do watch all of the investigations that goes on in there, and just find absolutely fascinating how stupid these things are. But anyway, people keep pouring their cash into them.
I tell you what, it's like become blatant, like pump and dumps.
Oh yeah, meme coins. That's all they are. Pump and dumps and rug pulls.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's kind of crazy. Like, I don't have my Bitcoin anymore. I sold it a few years ago. It's gone up since, and I'm fine with that. I just at one point I was like, I'd like that money in my pocket now. But yeah, I would only use Bitcoin. All these other ones are crazy.
Yes,
crazy.
Now, get back to this crazy Hawk Tour purchase.
Yeah.
So apparently Peter V'landys has said they are openly, and this bit's in kind of quotation marks, looking at potential involvements with running rugby league in the UK, which would also include Super League. Talk of a potential takeover has been rife for months, but this admission from V'landys is certainly a step forward in this regard. Speaking to Code Sports Australia, V'landys detailed the potential takeover could see rugby league become a $1 billion international force. $1 billion international force. How much is the NFL and the NBA?
Well, that would be multi-billion.
Yeah, okay. So I'm just trying to put the word force into perspective here. The WWE, UFC.
Yeah. Look, the NRL is a really big league on a global scale compared to most other sporting leagues.
It is,
but
I don't know if I'd use the word force. Seems excessive.
I would, you know what? I would suggest that in if you look at rugby, the overall rugby section, like, you know, what the size of the NRL as a league in terms of what rugby is, both codes overall the NRL's a behemoth in that terms. But you know, it's a goal. I wrote an article about V'landys, I think it was today, I posted on my website, and I was talking about how we need this sort of aggression from our leader in rugby league. So I think it's good to see whenever I see that sort of talk in rugby league, because there's been so many times where we heard like slow and steady and, you know, we don't want to overextend ourselves and stuff. I'm glad that we now have a leader that's like, yeah, I want to make us a gigantic sport. So I'm not too upset about that.
Well, it says here, It could also lead to the NRL selling off State of Origin so that it could focus on growing the UK competition. And Blandy said, "We're looking at the UK. Never say never. That's if they want us. The first thing is there's always two people to an agreement. If they want us, we'll certainly look at it. If they approached us, we'll certainly look at it."
Now, Andrew, I won't answer this question. I'm going to ask it of you. How many people in English Rugby League do you think want to take orders from anybody from Australia in terms of running their own sport over there?
It'd be somewhere between none and two.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that the people who are most passionate about rugby league over there would probably rather go round to its funeral than see the thing thrive.
100%.
Which is part of their problem.
Yep, 100%.
I think, to be honest too, I'll say this, and not trying to play devil's advocate, I think they'd be fearful that if the NRL took over, they come over and try and put the same structures in place that have proven to be very successful. Put them in place in England in order to make it also very successful there. But that's not what they had back in 1904 that they persisted with until now. We want tradition, not survival, all right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what matters.
I don't mind.
Look at Jesus, all right? He's not here anymore, but he's tradition, and that's what's important. I'm sure Jesus probably would have preferred to be around instead of being nailed to a piece of wood in the middle of the... Anyway, it just seems a bit weird that that's their attitude, is that they'd rather die with the tradition than actually keep the fucking game alive.
Well, it's interesting when you see a club will go bust, like literally will be broke, and then they get purchased and their debt's cleared, and the fans of that club start talking shit. Like, it's like, yeah, we're back, baby. It's like, you're barely holding on. You're barely an entity. Just calm down. Try and survive the next 10 months, you know.
Your chook raffle just covered the cost of the chookies raffled off. Like, just calm down.
Yeah, exactly. But you and me have talked about this a number of times on the podcast, but here's the short version of what happens, right? Let's just say the NRL works out an agreement where they license the running of the sport in England. So they license the administrative role of the Rugby Football League / Super League. That happens on Monday. Tuesday, every club involved in Super League breaks away from that administration and starts their own competition, which would go ahead on the weekend, and they would not have to the revenue that they get from broadcasting those games doesn't get doled out to the rest of the game. It just stays within Super League clubs. That happens Tuesday. That's why the NRL can never invest in rugby league in the UK outside of going in saying, we're setting up NRL England. We are setting up brand new teams. They are under our control, and we have nothing to do with Super League or the Rugby Football League. That's the only way the NRL could do it. And if they did that, it would just crush Super League. But there's nothing to buy. There's nothing to take over because of the way that the game over there is run. And they don't want anybody messing with it. We've talked about this before, and you put it so eloquently 5 minutes ago. They will attend the funeral rather than, going to a makeover and trying to fix things.
Yeah, it's a hard fix.
Yeah, and it's completely impossible. Even this IMG stuff, like IMG has tried their best and they all hate it. Nothing's changed and they all hate it. Like if you looked at rugby league in the UK and said, what's the big changes IMG's been able to make? There's nothing. They've slowed down promotion and relegation a little bit, but that's it. And
look, let's be honest though. that is a major thing that they need to completely remove from English Rugby League, is that whole promotion relegation and the attitude that it gives the lower teams something to fight for, and it gives the teams that are struggling in the Super League a reason to keep trying to, keep playing. And at the end of the day, that idea, which was really strong when TV audiences and revenue was not that important to the game, it held some water back then. But now you need that cash. And the reason why it's hard to get that cash from TV rights is because the teams competing in the Super League every year is never the same. And TV and advertisers, they want to know which markets they're advertising to, which markets they're going to have games on for. These are all important things. And you can't predict who's going to be in the Super League in 3 years' time, which makes it hard to do a 3-year TV rights deal. What if a team says, you know what, we want to advertise for, I don't know, some major bank in Leeds. We're going to have them as our major sponsor. All they need is Leeds to stay in the Super League. Mm-hmm. And then Leeds gets absolutely decimated by injuries, maybe a salary cap scandal, who the fuck knows, and they finish last and get relegated. Then what?
Yeah.
And I know that's an extreme version, but it's not out of the realms of possibility. And that's the sort of stuff. Exactly.
Bradford.
Exactly. And these are the things that scare off your biggest, most lucrative sponsors. And that's the thing that the game needs to learn over there. You've got to start being a business and stop being just a sport that you used to love going to when you were, in the 60s and 70s and 80s. It's beyond that now.
Yeah, look, the mentality is amateur, and the mentality had to start being professional like in the 60s, and it just never moved on from that. They didn't make that transition like pretty much every other major sporting competition did, and it's cost them to the point where now it's like you look at markets. How many of the teams are in actual markets that would show up on a marketing scale in terms of national marketing scale? Like Leeds is obviously a city, but then you're looking at portions of a market for the rest of the teams, and it's just it doesn't matter now. Just doesn't matter, and they're not going to change it. So that's it. But the only way the NRL goes over to the UK is if they go in, they say we're running our own competition with our own teams. It's a national competition, and that's it. Because they're not stepping into the mess that's over there and dealing with people that hate everything they want to change. It's just not going to work. And we've talked about it a million times. I can't believe that people still talk about it. I thought it was so obvious,
I think it's possible to fix it, but the only way you can do it is to ignore all of the people involved with the game and the way it's been run in the past, and just go in and do it your own way.
Yeah,
I think Volandis is better suited to what the situation the UK is in, than what the NRL's in.
Well, I see people in the UK and they talk about getting boxing promoters to take over running the Rugby Football League because they like the way they talk shit. And it's like you don't even realise that you need to have a complete realignment of your understanding of how a sport needs to work. Like, you don't need somebody that's out there promoting the sport. You need somebody that's going to fundamentally change every single level of this sport, going from junior rugby league right through to the professional game. And they just don't know that that's how it works. Yeah. They don't have any concept of it. And even if they did, and they were sat down and they were told like how much money a Super League club should be spending on things that aren't the Super League team itself, like junior development, coaching, local clinics, like all sorts of stuff, they would say, we're not doing that. And that's it. That's where it ends.
Exactly. I think it's as I said, it's definitely fixable. All the Super Leagues, all the NRL would have to do is just go there and say, right, we're just going to buy St Helens, Wigan, Leeds. What are you going to do?
And look, I don't think that British fans understand how easy that would be.
Yeah.
Like that, literally, if the NRL wanted to buy every single Super League club with the profits that they made last year, and we're going to look at the annual report just now, but with just the pure profits they made, most of the profits would still be there. Like it's not like it would take all of the money that the NRL profited last year. The vast chunk of it would be there, and maybe that's the only way you could do it is if you bought every single Super League club. But then you're buying terrible assets that there's not much to, and most of them you would have to dissolve or move them immediately to have any value in those assets. And I don't think that a businessman would make that decision.
Oh God, no. God, no. So it's definitely. I think it can always be saved, and it can definitely be fixed. So the people over there and the administrators over there have just got to learn how to take it. That's the only way it's got to happen.
I think it's a lost cause.
Oh, look, to the most part, it is. It's not going to, bear any fruit. The only way it can bear fruit is if the NRL is able to get a massive deal with something like Netflix or something like that to broadcast the game globally, and they pay a lot more. And so that would be the only reason why the NRL is going over and chasing Super League, because then they've got the entire English audience that they can sell it to, as well as the Australian one. The Australians are going to watch some of the Super League games anyway. A lot of the English are going to watch the Australian games. So you're going to actually have both games now accessible in both countries, where at the moment it's kind of not. So that'd be a way to boost that TV revenue that way for the NRL. And that's pretty much, I think, the major reason why they would look at that, because it would increase their TV rights deal, and it might make them attractive to, like one of those big global streaming companies, as well as still getting the TV rights deals over here and stuff like that. And that would be the only way they could make it viable. It would still cost them money, and it would take probably close to a decade for them to actually turn it around and actually make it, functional on its own 2 feet over there in England. But it would be possible. It's going to take more than Peter V'landys, though. It needs actual media professionals involved with it to make it work.
I wonder if, and like I've talked about the very long-term future of the game and how I would see it, where we end up with like a 30 team, and I'm talking like well down the track. Probably won't see it in my lifetime, but we've got like a 30 or a 40 team competition that runs between March and say October, where you play say 20 games in that competition. You have games midweek, like it's not a weekend to weekend thing. It's like you basically have games every day, and it's on a rolling schedule, like the NBA is, say, for instance. And the NRL looks at, say, buying, it flat out buys or purchases, say, Leeds, because Leeds is a city. That's the thing why we keep talking about Leeds. Say it says it purchases Leeds, purchases the Catalan Dragons, starts up a team in London, starts up a team in, say, Paris, and maybe buys, I don't know, say Wigan or Hull or St Helens. And it just brings in a block of European teams into the greater NRL competition and say their teams like 35, 36, 37, 38, and that's the way they do it. But then that begs the question, like, what does that leave? Like, what happens to what is left behind of British Rugby League at that point, when you've only got, say, 3 teams that are at that level and they can outspend everyone? Is that what British Rugby League wants to end up being? Because that would be what it would end up being, would be just 3 teams or something like that are in the great NRL comp that they see every, once a month or something like that at home.
I think if you went to having games on nearly every single day, you could have like 4 groups of. Let's go 4 groups of 4 Australian teams and 4 groups of 4 English teams, right? And they're all in the one competition. And then they both spend a month in the other country. They play all the games they need to play in that month. So you're not constantly flying backwards and forwards. You're just doing one flight over, one flight back.
Yeah.
Sure, you've got a bit of accommodation to pay for, but it's fine.
Yeah, they can afford it.
You do that sort of thing. And then you just come over, you play all your games in England, and then both teams fly back on the same plane. You pay all your English teams play all their games in Australia, and they fly back. They play the games against other English teams, that sort of thing. There's ways you could structure it so that it doesn't have too much of a financial burden on the travels and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can still get the whole thing done. It's definitely workable. There's no reason why it couldn't work.
The problem
I would be surprised if they went towards that. It's kind of, let's be honest, it's kind of similar to what they were trying to do with that 1997 World Club Challenge.
Yeah.
Which was admittedly hastily organised, hence why it was so atrocious.
Yeah, and it was a disaster and uncompetitive. But like the problem is, if you got to that point, the English teams this huge NRL competition that wants to be a media behemoth would want, and not the Super League teams that we see now. Like they're not going to bring. Say the NRL is making by then 1.5 billion a year overall. They'll get nothing by adding small towns to that competition that are in Northern England. They want London. They want Paris. They want the giant population centres. They want the giant media centres. They want the giant business centres. They don't want the local glass company. You know, they don't want the local the local rag that has a circulation that's, less than fucking what we do on this
the
podcast.
Tamworth newsletter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it would be like, you've got this giant sporting corporation that Peter V'landys is wanting to build, and then all of a sudden you go and you get the team from Tamworth. Like, it would make no sense. You want the cities, you want the big spots, and that's the problem Super League has, is that it doesn't have those big cities, and that's what the NRL would be after. And so I think if the NRL did that, I don't know that many Super League teams would be involved in that. You might see them, like Leeds, obviously, we've talked about that, but would St Helens have to end up turning into Liverpool? Would Salford have to become Manchester? Stuff like that.
Yes.
Yeah. But that's what it comes down to. And you could see where maybe it'll be forced on them one day down the track where the NRL comes in and just swamps it and they don't get a say in it.
Well, they've been through that before.
Yeah.
Blue Sox.
The Halifax Blue Sox.
That's the one that gets me the most. So I remember that one going, wow, it's sunk.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
So part of this big deal apparently would be the sale of State of Origin.
Yeah.
Is that to me that sounds like the more craziest part of this whole article.
In what way?
Why would you ever sell State of Origin? The game does not need to sell State of Origin in order to buy Super League. So why would you sell State of Origin?
But are they talking about they're not just talking about the TV rights. They're talking about basically licensing off State of Origin to a different company.
This article says could also lead to the NRL selling off State of Origin to focus on growing the competition in the UK.
Yeah, see, I don't understand how that would work.
Neither do I. But or why you would need to.
I understand breaking away State of Origin football from the overall TV rights and selling it as its own TV rights. I understand that.
Yes.
But, I can't see that you would sell the property to, say, an investment company and have them run it and profit off it. I mean, you would have to make you would have to make so much money out of a move like that because you will never get it back because it makes so much money.
Yeah.
So that you never get it back. I don't understand how that would work.
Yeah.
You would have to get someone like IMG come in, say, we want to license State of Origin entirely for the next 10 years, and we will give you like $2 billion for it. It'd have to be something like that.
I'm staggered that IMG has not yet thought of somehow doing crossover work with UFC or WWE, given that its parent company is the Endeavour Group, which is the merger of those two big businesses.
I just think that Super League's too small and it's just not worth it for them.
Yeah, it probably is, but it would not take much effort to do a bit of a cross promotion, given that there's former Super League and NRL players that are over contracted as, WWE wrestlers.
Mm.
It seems pretty easy to do.
See,
So
the
why
way
not do it?
But let's say for instance, former UFC star, and he still works for them in the commentary role, I believe. Oh my God, I immediately forgot his name. Hey, Michael Bisping. There we go.
Yep.
Michael Bisping from Northern England. So say on the UFC card, they talk to a Super League player on the UFC card to promote Super League to the UFC audience. How many of those people are going to watch a Super League game from that point? Probably very few, maybe in the hundreds, At the same time, if Michael Bisping goes over and he does media stuff for a Super League club, what is the reach that Super League currently has in the UK? It's towns. So I just don't think it aligns at all.
No, it would purely be done to promote the rugby league code, not the other way around. The other way around doesn't need the promotion.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is what are you promoting to your bigger audience in the UFC? Like you're trying to promote, hey everyone, you should check out this competition.
It's simply exposure, man.
But what is the end of that exposure? Like
the end is it becomes something that you can actually turn into some minor TV rights deal somewhere. The NRL and Super League both had very, very small minor TV rights deals in the US several years ago. It may not have been much, but it was a start. They let them lapse, but it was a start. And that's, especially for Super League, they need to make that start. And because they're not making the money from their own country anymore. They need to look further for it somewhere. They're not going to get it in England, where their reach is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. They've got to look elsewhere because they're slowly dying because of their own poor management. Mm-hmm. They need to go further. And I just think for IMG, this is it's an easy way to promote the game. They can get former players, Luke Menzies. He goes he's a WWE wrestler over there in the name of Ridge Holland. Mm-hmm. And Daniel Vito, who's over there as, I don't know if he's still contracted WWE or not, but he was Zion Quinn or something in one of the minor shows I had. But you've got them there. They had The Rock do the intro for, what was it, the World Cup here one year. Like, you've got some names there. There's some crossover there. You've got something to work with. That's what you need to start with. But start with something and go from there.
The thing is, though, that's about the giant NRL Australian TV audience, right? Like you say the WWE. Let's keep using that. Say they do a crossover with the NRL, makes sense, right? You've got the WWE. They want to get eyeballs on them through the biggest television sport in Australia in all the big markets that the NRL's in, and the NRL wants to get that reciprocative audience that the WWE has to try and get that global audience for their giant competition, right? And the other thing that needs to be kept in mind is that when you turn on an NRL game, the production is as good as any other sport in the world. So you get these big stadiums that look great on TV. It's filmed great. The athletes are obviously high quality athletes. It's a very big high quality production without question, and it looks great on TV. Chuck on a Super League game, and it just looks sad a lot of the times.
Yeah, but that is, as I said, that's because there's so little money in there that everything they do now has to be, budgets have to be slashed and burned to make it constantly functioning and slowly eating itself alive. They need to get whatever they can to try and get money into that thing, because the current method, it's not working.
No.
So any sort of cross promotion is going to help it. So this is why they've gone to Las Vegas. They're piggybacking off the NRL because they have to.
I think the NRL, I tend to think that it's more the NRL wants to fill out the program, and having Super League clubs there was just easier.
Of course it was.
Yeah.
But it's also the Super League, if they didn't think it was going to be worth their time and effort, they wouldn't have bothered with it.
Yeah, that's true. So
they would have just said, this is an NRL thing, you sort it out.
Yeah.
But they're going to piggyback off the NRL wherever they can. And so this is just another thing they can piggyback onto. And the American audiences aren't going to know the difference between the Super League and the NRL. They're just going to think it's all the same sport.
Yes.
That's to the Super League's benefit.
The problem that you have then, though, say you snag an American that feels that way, right? And they go home and they look at the schedules and they go, okay, I understand there's the NRL and I understand there's Super League now. They put on an NRL game, just pick any game. The vast majority of those NRL games that they choose are likely to look really good to them on TV. The vast majority of Super League games just don't look as good. And I'm not talking about the quality of the match. I'm talking about just the presentation, just most of the stuff.
This is why they need to do the cross promotions to get some money in there. Yeah, you're kind of trying to help me make my argument.
I know, but it's almost like the tail wagging the dog then, in that you say, we want to make the money, right? So let's fucking wag the dog by its tail.
What other option do they have?
Well, they could have started fixing things fucking 70 years ago. And they did.
That's true.
And
but they didn't.
Fucked.
But we're here now in 2025. What options have they got?
But
that's my point. Is that they've now got to the point where they've completely shut themselves down so much and confined themselves to such a small part of England that's the only area that that sponsors are going to be interested in advertising in. It's going to be localized sponsors, and so they have to go looking somewhere else because no one in England gives a shit about them anymore. Yeah. They've got to find money elsewhere because no one in England is giving it to them.
Okay,
so they have to piggyback anywhere they can. So they've got to piggyback off the NRL. They've got to try and do some cross promotion with the WWE or something like that. And given that IMG is their new daddy, IMG is in with the Endeavour Group. It's just an easy way to promote it without any real burden or cost or drama for anyone. To me, it's just an easy advertising thing for them.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, and let's just say Super League clubs. Let's not talk about one club or another club. Considering that Super League clubs are not marketable in the vast majority of Great Britain, and we know that because if they were, they'd be making way more money, right? I think that we both accept that, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where in the entire world have Super League clubs got some sort of marketability outside of their local towns? That would be Australia, right?
Sure.
Okay. How marketable are Super League clubs in Australia?
Not much difference what they are in England, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's a really good answer. It's barely above the zero marketability that they have in the vast majority of the UK, right? If that is the best marketability in the whole rest of the world, outside of their own small towns, what fucking chance do they have? And that's where this conversation is between somebody that feels like they've got a chance, even if it's a small chance, which is you, and someone like me that thinks it's too late, they're fucked.
See, this is the thing, is instead of trying to market the clubs, you're trying to market the game.
Okay, if I'm going to market
this is above what the clubs can do. This is about, we need to get money for a major sponsor for the game.
If you were
we need like Pepsi or Coke or IBM or some shit like that. We can't have Stobart run around with shit on the sides of their trucks for free. We need to do something that's actually going to bring some money into this fucking game. That's the attitude they've got to have. The clubs are secondary at the moment. If the clubs want to go and make some money and try and market themselves, that's shit they've got to do off their own back, not with the Super League's help or the NRL's help or anything like that. That's something they do on their own.
Okay, but here's the thing. Here's where it comes down to. Just say there's a dude in Mexico accidentally joins the podcast right now I don't know what happens, but he ends up on the podcast. And he says, hey, what are you two talking about? And we're like, oh, we do this podcast about this sport called rugby league. And he's like, oh, really? I'd never really heard about it. Give me an example of it. Show me something. What would you show him?
You'd show him the NRL. All right?
Yes, exactly.
But my point is, the NRL and Super League are rugby league. What we're trying to sell to a new country is not a club or a competition, but the game. But
they're going to go towards the best of that game.
It doesn't matter. Like, if the NRL is going to own the Super League, it doesn't fucking matter who gets the money.
Yeah, but they don't own Super League yet, do they?
No, we're working on the hypothetical that that's what they're doing. And if they're not doing it, then this is what IMG needs to be doing, is trying to advertise it over there so they can try and get some money for the game. The game is what IMG is running, not the clubs. So they need to try and get money, and they need to advertise the game. And if using the NRL to help promote Super League in America helps them advertise and sell the game, then that's what they've got to do. If using WWE superstars or UFC people to help them advertise rugby league somehow as a crossover, then that's the sort of shit they're going to have to do. They have to start thinking outside the box, because the shit that England's been doing for the last 50, 60 years has got them to this point where no one in England can be fucked giving them money anymore. So what else can they do? They have to think of something else, and they have to think fast. And at the moment, the best idea they've got is, let's just wait and see if the NRL will buy us.
It really is, isn't it? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And this is why they've got to try and sell the actual concept of the game. We don't care who the fuck's playing. We need people in America to see rugby league being played and go, oh, yeah, this is a good game. And, you know, this bloke's watching it, and they've got the WD on there. And, you know, you put on the WWE on Netflix, prime time, you got all those people watching and go, what the fuck is this? That's what Vince McMahon did when he first started the XFL. And then when he tried to set it loose from the WWE, the freaking thing died in the ass. But it's this, the Super League is desperate. It's got to do something.
Andrew, you've convinced me. I'm sitting here and you've convinced me. And here's the thing, right? Here's how I would have put it. Fuck it, why not?
That's right. That's where they're at.
Why not? What's it going to do? What's the worst that's going to happen? It's still going to die slowly. Like, fuck it.
Yeah. Look, you've got there's no risk anymore.
Yeah, sure. That's a really good point.
The English game has done all the risk already.
Yeah.
They've run all the risk.
It'd be stagnant for 60 years. Turns out it's not a great strategy.
It didn't work.
Yeah. We thought it would pay off, man.
We were just sitting around waiting for it to work. We thought, yeah, that's coming. It's coming.
They were like, hodl in the 60s, and it just didn't work. I'm just thinking, like, who could they promote the game with in the UK that it would break through? And I'm thinking, like, I know, Ainsley, any of the guys off Top Gear.
Well, I mean, the Top Gear guys they should have used, because, you know, Clarkson's from Doncaster. I mean, that's just around the corner from Huddersfield and Wakefield and all those, you know, mining towns and stuff like that where rugby league has been around forever.
He would fucking hate rugby league, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, he would fucking hate its guts.
Absolutely. And Richard Hammond was from Birmingham.
Oh, was he?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like Birmingham might as well be fucking Mars.
I know.
You know.
I know.
They're like Birmingham, and you're like, it's fucking 45 minutes down the road. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah. Or as I say in Yorkshire, Doubt Road.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think James May's a Londoner, so that one's fucked anyway.
Yeah.
But they could have done something there, and they probably still could. But they're now longer on TV, so they let that opportunity slide.
Yeah.
They've got Adam Hills over there at the moment, who
he tries.
Whether you like him or not, he's big in England.
Why do you say that like I don't like him?
No, I wasn't talking about you directly.
I was going to say, do people not like him?
No, I don't know. I'm just saying, like, whether you like him or not, he's pretty popular in England.
Do you not like him?
I've got to think about it's fine. I'm a big fan of him. I got no issue with him. But no, it's just he's one guy.
Yeah.
And how much of his time should he be actually giving to promote all of rugby league in England?
Yeah. Look, it's the same.
You can't leave him on his own.
Yeah, and it's the same sort of thing with Russell Crowe owning Souths, and he would talk about it a lot. And like we did see a lot of celebrities like wearing Souths gear. It was kind of crazy to see like Snoop Dogg randomly wearing a Souths hat and stuff like that. But how much is that really worth to the overall game? Really, how many people does that make watch the sport or become a fan of the sport? And I don't think that it's many at all. I think it's the difference between like false marketing and real marketing.
Of course, but that's the thing. It's got to be if they're going to go down this path and do this sort of thing.
Yeah,
it has to be persistent.
Yeah,
right. That's the one thing I was immediately critical of when V'landys first said we're going to take games to LA. I was like, oh, if this is just a one-off thing, it's just me a pointless wank that just costs money and doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
But to his credit, he's gone back to second year and he looks like he's going to make it a genuine thing we do every year, which makes it an event.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's an event, it makes America feel like they're a part of something special in our game, and so that helps to get them in. It'll take time, of course it will. But that's what it's got to do. And look, there's other sports that are pretty big outside of America which are trying to get in there. The Formula One's a good example.
Yeah, and they've had similar issues, and I think the thing with Formula One too is that there's been times where, and you and me are big Formula One fans, where it's looked like, oh, this might be working, and then like immediately it goes back to zero. The clock sets right back to zero.
Yeah, and it's over weird things. Like there was that race many years ago with the tire issue and 4 cars raced.
Yeah, in Indianapolis. Yeah.
And then the next big issue is probably going to be something like, because Drive to Survive has been so huge, not that I've ever seen an episode of it, but it's been so huge in America. But part of the reason of its success was the Americans' love for Daniel Ricciardo now that he's not racing anymore. And they've decided they're going to cut the series now. Are they just going to drop away and then we go back to, let's just go back to putting races in Germany again?
Yeah. And so it can be very fleeting. And I've got this thing where like sometimes, and Australia is very good for this, like you'll get a nation that will get interested in a sport, but it doesn't get ingrained in the sporting psyche. So like, every so often, and hockey's going through this a little bit at the moment in the US, where they're like, oh, yeah, hockey's not too bad, and it's starting to get back into it, but then it fades away again eventually. Australia, we were very big on the America's Cup at one point, and now no one gives a fuck, right?
That's because we stopped winning it.
Yeah, but we won it, we did it, and no one gives a fuck. And we've had the same thing with, say, 500cc racing was very, very big in Australia at one point, and then it's kind of faded away. And like that, we've still got races in, the MotoGP, but it's not part of the Australian sporting psyche like it once used to be. No. And we there are sports that we do that with. Swimming had its moment in Australia. Anytime that like soccer in Australia had its big moment, it was like, oh, is this soccer going to kick on? And it's like, no, it's not. So I guess that happens with other sports too. We just don't realize it. And, Formula One goes through that in the US, and you and me notice it because we're Formula One fans.
That's right. And maybe that's another thing that, Super League could attach itself to try and get some traction somewhere. They need to start thinking outside the box and hooking up with other sports that are on a similar sort of struggle somewhere.
The thing is, none of it matters unless you've got your very sound working base in place, So Formula One could, go in and out like the tide in the US. It didn't ever matter because it had the rest of the world and mostly Europe, right? Yeah. The NRL, if not one single thing happens out of their push into the US, it doesn't matter because the sport in Australia and New Zealand is just flying, right?
Yep.
They don't have that in Super League.
No.
That's a problem.
They need to find it. They need to find it from outside of England because they're not going to find it inside England at the moment.
No.
If they can find it outside of England, then the English people will go, hang on, I remember that game, that's ours. And they might start to come back. And then, they'll have some money in order to promote it within their own country. And that's kind of what you want. You want to start building it up again and get the money invested back into the game and back into the juniors and get some brilliant juniors come through because they haven't had that for a long time. And try and build some success on the field as well as off the field. Because if you don't have success on both areas, you just die in the arse. I mean, France is a good example of that after World War II.
Yeah.
All those juniors, all that money, and then as soon as they fell away, the team just, the comp, everything just fell away hard, and they never got back there.
Yeah, I wonder if, I've travelled to it because it's a weird flight to get to and from France, especially the rugby league areas from Australia. I wonder if those travel issues ever sort themselves out, and it won't be because of rugby league. It'll just be because, the demand's there generally. I wonder if it gets to a point where there are a lot more direct flights to and from the rugby league areas in France if the NRL would look at France more as the stepping stone.
Maybe Pete Bedell might know someone who says that Peter Vlandis is looking to buy an airport in France, in the southern France somewhere, the Carcassonne region somewhere, maybe.
Maybe. But I wonder what the reaction would be out of UK, and when I say UK rugby league types, I mean the administrators and people like that. I don't mean the fans. I wonder what their reaction would be if, like, next year the NRL said, the Vegas thing we have, well, we're setting up our own thing and we're going to have Vegas, and then the next week we're going to have Wembley, and it's going to be completely enclosed and our thing. And if the NRL started to almost step into that market almost as a hostile entity with the same sport, I don't know how it would work in terms of
what's the English Rugby League going to do?
Well, that's the thing. Because you know what I was about to say. Like in the past, there would have been almost, the blocks in place in terms of like we're the Rugby Football League and we have to sanction any rugby league event in the UK, right?
Yes.
And it's a similar sort of thing in Australia, I guess. If a Super League teams come over here and they couldn't have unsanctioned events, I think those days are over in sport. And I think, as you say, what's the Rugby Football League going to do? I think there'd be nothing they could do. And the weird thing is, I think that an NRL weekend at Wembley would be absolutely gigantic. I think that English Rugby League administrators would shit their pants because they'd be like, they're coming and we can't stop them. And if they decide to set up a team in London, team in Cardiff, team in Bradford, and offer fucking $20 million to buy Leeds, there is fuck all we can do. They're just going to do it.
Yeah. And if the NRL are smart, that's all they'd do. That way they could put some money into the game to look after the game because they'd need the game to be okay in order to look after their teams there. They wouldn't have to worry about buying the game, just buy the successful teams.
Yeah, and look...
Or they could just be out of dicks and just buy like, I don't know, Salford, and then just fill Salford with NRL elite players and just have Salford win every premiership for now until, I don't know, when the people of England get sick of watching Salford win every premiership every year. God, that'd be brilliant.
Well, look, they've not got sick of the same three teams winning it every year since Bradford went bust. So,
well, look, that's a little bit of a variety. You know? Imagine if it was Salford for 25 years.
Maybe they would love it. And then the NRL pulls their money out and Salford immediately goes broke again.
Imagine that the NRL realises that, you know, they hold all the authority here, they hold all the power. So they'll just go around and they'll buy Salford for 3 years. They win 3 premierships. They go, we might just go and buy Huddersfield. Huddersfield wins the next 3. They say, well, we have a bit of fun. Let's go and buy Batley.
Look,
get Batley promoted, and then they win 3 titles.
It sounds absolutely ridiculous, but is that any different to what happened with the Toronto Wolfpack when you basically had that? I think they bought the license of a team and then just powered them through every division, and like, it's that'd be a different way of sports ownership. Hey, just being like, you've got this giant entity with all the money at once, basically saying we will not own a team for more than 3 years and then we'll move on.
Yep.
That'd be different.
Every team wins the premierships.
Yeah.
Just make an absolute mockery of the whole process. So there'll be one team they won't buy.
What?
St. Helens.
I don't know. I mean, St. Helens, like, you've always got if you bought St. Helens, you always know that, you've always got the gate takings from the most popular team that turns up in St. Helens every year, which is Wigan.
Oh, this is true. How upset would they be if, I don't know, a team from Edinburgh then gets promoted through League One and wins 2 premierships in the Super League?
You know what? There would be
fantastic.
There would be a certain look. There was a lot of people that hated the Wolfpack, even though the Wolfpack did everything that they were asked to do. Like, they literally went through the levels, they played the game, and they got there, and there were still people that were like, yeah, but. And
look at how much people were paying attention to them, though.
Oh, it was outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they were getting big crowds in Toronto for rugby league games and championship games.
And this is kind of goes back to the point I was making. You just got to promote it any way you can on a different market. Eventually, it'll start working if you get the right people involved. Toronto is a good example of it. They got the right people in there to promote it locally, and they fucking flocked to it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just a shame that they didn't pay the fucking wages and keep it alive, because it was on track to be fucking something special.
And look, as soon as the Rugby Football League got a chance, they put 2 in the back of its head.
Of course.
Yeah, which is just so fucking typical. And I think that I think the Toronto Wolfpack would have been put immediately into the NRL if it wasn't in basically the worst place on the planet for them to be. It was like, you couldn't have picked a worse place for them to be in terms of travel. Even if it was the Vancouver Wolfpack, I think that there would have been really hard consideration about them coming into the NRL immediately. Yeah, man.
We need to get an Australian-based team with an Australian name, set it up in England. Who gives a fuck where? Fill it with NRL players and just watch that team dominate. And I'm suggesting we have the Tamworth Terriers.
Well, I'm pretty sure that a number of years ago, Steve Mascord talked about what Super League should look at doing is having a Perth-based team.
Yes, although I wouldn't actually have the team based in Perth. I would have the Perth-based team based in Perth in England, but have them as Australian Perth, not English Perth. But keep them over there so you don't have to worry about all the cost of travel and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But they can still promote everything Perth, WA, that sort of stuff over there.
So they're almost like a Barbarians rugby union team.
Exactly.
Where it's like every single game is an away game.
Yes. But when they do have home games at whatever venue they choose, they set it up like it's some sort of outpost of Australia somewhere. Like instead of having a hill with grass on you can sit on, turn it into a beach. It'll be farcical and 16 degrees and all the English people are sweating, but all the Aussies are out there freezing their asses off. You do something like that. You have like a beach theme there.
Yeah.
You'd sell Australian only products there, not English ones.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. You turn it into an actual event. I mean, we'll have a look over it. We see in Sydney, Newtown Jets do it every year.
Well, wouldn't that be the way to do it? Yeah, the Newtown Jets, they're an interesting one there, and there are similarities between themselves and the Wolfpack in terms of how they did things. But isn't what you're talking about kind of the concept that they were flirting with the London Broncos a little bit?
Yes, initially, yes.
Yeah, so...
But they never pulled the trigger on it.
No, maybe that's what the Broncos should do, is be like we are... Like, the London Broncos, pretty good name, actually,
Yeah.
Maybe the way to go with that is like, listen, we are the expat team. Forget... And the problem is that, like, the junior system in London does spit out talent. But what if you said, like, what if the Rugby Football League gave the London Broncos a full exemption to just be an Australian team or only Australian players? The only problem you would have is the sort of players it would attract with how low the salary cap is over there. They're not going to be great players. And maybe, if they're not going to be a good team, the novelty would wear off very quickly. They would need to have some sort of...
I'd have to have a look at how their salary cap works and what the third-party agreements are like. Because there might be a backdoor for the NRL to pay players to play over there.
Possibly.
What if they was to say, look, instead of paying you, we'll pay for all your accommodation and all your travel costs as well as your salary?
Do you realize we are two Australians and our bright idea for fixing Super League is to take an English club, get rid of all of the English players, replace them with Australians, let them pay more than the salary cap, and win everything.
Yes.
That's our fucking plan.
And you know what? It would work better.
I think it would work amazing. Look, what it comes down to, Andrew, is when it comes to playing rugby league, we're just better than they are, And we do it better, and we're better in every single way, and we should just completely go over there and dominate their competition with one of their own teams.
Yeah, just one team. We don't need to own the whole thing. Just one team.
Just one team.
We don't want to rub it in. We just want to let you know. Yeah. Every year.
And
how much better we are
for it to happen because we are superior.
Yeah.
You know what? You could have the London Broncos being the Australian team, and then set up a completely new actual expansion club, say in Cardiff or something, that's all Kiwis.
Oh, that would be brilliant.
And you know what? I think the Kiwi team would work better. Because I think Kiwis tend to make the transition to Super League a little smoother than Aussies do.
Yeah.
And I think that they tend to, just the social side of it, I think that I don't know if it's similar to the social side of the game in New Zealand that they grew up with.
I wonder more if it's the climate's a bit more similar, given that
maybe they're just used to playing in those sort of conditions. It feels like home a little bit.
Yeah.
Man, if Super League did that, that would be really smart, hey?
Imagine that. You have the Australian London Broncos playing against the what's a Kiwi place that exists over there as well? There's got to be one.
A Kiwi place with the same name.
Yeah. I'm going to do a Google search.
I mean, it's got to be like something like a Christchurch or because they have a lot of Maori name places in New Zealand. I can't imagine there's an Invercargill in fucking England, you know. Maybe there is in Scotland. I don't know.
Dunedin is named after the Scottish Gaelic for Edinburgh.
Okay.
Birkenhead, Devonport, Westport, Belfast.
Belfast. They've got Belfasts.
Yeah, right. New Brighton.
Which
one do we like out of those?
Surely, everywhere's got a Cardiff. I think even England's got Australia's got a Cardiff.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, New Zealand's got to have a Cardiff somewhere.
We could just go with Edinburgh, and then you could have the New Zealand Scots. the Celtic Maori.
The Kiwi Scots.
Yeah.
They'd be called the Cots.
And they would just play. You'd have the London team playing against the Edinburgh team in the grand final every year.
Wouldn't they love that?
Not a single Englishman in the grand final.
You get the two people who attended the grand final walk from other sides of the stadium. It's like, how you going, mate? Oh, how you going, bro? You think we'll win? Oh, your team's pretty good, bro. Yeah, I think your team's pretty good, mate. We'll see, hey? Got a warm beer, bro? Nah, I don't get warm beers anymore.
That would be epic. I'd pay to watch that.
Look, so would I. I think we just fixed Super League.
Oh well, it's on brand, but that's what we do is fix things.
We added 2 elite teams to their competition that require no player resources, that don't require any player development money to be spent. Like,
we're not even touching on the English player base at all. You can have them all. All the ones that are currently in those teams, you can take them all back. And
I bet you could put those teams together like in the next week out of players that are just on the fringe of first grade, maybe in the lower grades, looking for an opportunity. That'd be amazing.
It would.
I like that. I think of all the ideas that we've talked about today, that's the one I like the most.
We've thrashed out a good one there.
Yeah. If all we need to do is to Super League, if we add a Samoan team, a Tongan team, we add a Papua New Guinean team, a Fijian team, and then we get rid of all of the English teams, then I'm excited about Super League.
I'd leave the English ones there just for fun.
Oh, would you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Could we keep relegation just so that they get relegated? Because that would be fun.
No. I think even better.
Yeah.
You scrap it so they can just get flocked every week.
This is going to do big numbers in England, this podcast, I can tell.
Oh, you love us.
Have you got time? Can we keep talking? Because it is getting late. Okay.
Absolutely.
Should we talk about the thing that we were going to record about, actually, which is the NRL's annual report that come out this week?
I'm only looking at it for the first time now, so...
Yeah, same here. I haven't gone through it a huge amount. So we talked about the annual report on the last podcast. We said when it comes out, we would look through it. So let's look at some of the big points I wanted to make in this annual report. The first one is that they said the rugby league and the NRL is Australia and the Pacific's number one sport. 200.5 million people watched over the course of the year, which is up 8.6% year on year, which is a pretty big jump and probably has a lot to do with the Pacific Championships, I would say, keeping that line into all of these Pacific nations, that they knew that at the end of the year they can watch the Pacific Cup, and why not watch the NRL on top of that?
How much?
200.5 million.
The current population of Oceania is 46.4 million.
You had to ruin it, didn't you? Well, but I guess that
I take it Andrew Abdo put this thing together.
that's got to be the accumulated audience, I guess.
That is exactly what it is.
Yeah. It is pretty funny though, isn't it? When you think of it that way.
That's very dicky wording.
Yeah. The next one, 4.79 million people attended in total, which was up 3.8%, which is pretty good. Participation, 1.03 million, which is up a massive 20.6%. Now, later on we will get into this. They're starting to look at participation numbers a little bit differently in rugby league. They're starting to look at it like other sports in Australia do, where basically if you are in primary school and you attend a coaching clinic for whatever sport, you are then classed as being a participant.
If you're in primary school and you heard someone say either NRL or Rugby League, you're included in the numbers.
Yeah.
I mean, a 20% increase in anything in any annual report automatically raises eyebrows.
Yeah. And look, there are some big gains being made in women's rugby league for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, when you start saying 20%, like you need to look at that number. 11 million NRL fans. I don't know how they calculate that. I'm guessing that that's people that engage with the NRL on a regular basis. That is up 3.8%. NRL accounts, 3.51 million. I'm guessing that might be social media accounts.
It must be.
Yeah, it's got to be. And that is up 12.9%, which again that's one of those jumps that you kind of look at and you say, what's that about? You know?
Yeah.
And then some of the details from those sorts of things that the annual report goes into it a little bit in further depth. So let's just go down the list here. Number of sports experience, because there were some other interesting things that we were looking at.
I've got a few here on, was it page 9 or so? It says 61.4 million in ticketing revenue, which is a 19% increase on 2023. 940,000 major event attendees, which is up 14%. 107,000 new fans attending NRL major events for the first time, which is up 73% year
Holy
on
shit.
year.
That's interesting. I wonder how much of that is just purely the Vegas game. Like, say you get 5,000 now. I mean, that's a giant portion of that.
Yeah. 7.3 million NRLW fan base, up 5.7%. 11.2 million viewership across NRLW and Women's Origin is up 13%.
Yeah, the Women's Origin, I saw some stats during the week that the NRL put out talking about Women's Rugby League viewership compared to the AFL Women's viewership, and it was a lot more. And it was interesting because the AFL really started pushing their women's competition really hard when it first kicked off, and then the NRL started, I think it was a year or two later.
Yeah, it was about 2 years later. I think the problem, though, with the AFLW is they modified aspects of the game because they felt it was probably going to help the women. So I believe they used a slightly smaller ball, they used a slightly smaller field, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
But it wasn't helped by a bunch of older AFL players coming out and just, basically shitting all over it.
Yeah.
So the girls playing the game got off to a very unhelpful start. Yeah. Plus, they were giving away tickets for free, and so they were being criticised for that as well. Mm-hmm. Oh, you can't draw a real crowd. You've got to give away free tickets. They're going, are you trying to promote this game or what?
And I think the other thing is, too, that it always felt less organic from the AFL, like a lot of their stuff does, where they were just like, let's throw money at it and get our media outlets to talk it up and stuff and hope that it catches. And it felt like it got a little traction early, but then started falling off as maybe the people that installed the AFL women's competition kind of, I don't know, they lost a little bit of interest in pushing it forward, whereas the NRLW feels a lot more organic in terms of your general fan having an actual general interest in it. Like, as a Penrith Panthers supporter, I really want to watch a Penrith Panthers women's team, and it's real. And I don't know that you get that sort of feeling from your general AFL fan. I think that they don't give a fuck, and it's kind of an AFL thing. They really don't give a fuck about anything about AFL outside of the AFL competition.
I think, look...
And it's part of their strength that they really give a fuck about it. And are so engaged in the AFL, but they don't care outside of anything else.
No, and look, I'm not someone who watches AFL. I hear about some of this stuff in the media because it's everywhere down here. But I think the biggest mistake they made, and I understand why they did it, was doing things like modifying, rules or the ground or equipment and shit like that to try and help the game.
Yeah.
I think that comes across more belittling than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the women, it would be better if they were out there and playing a game, even to a poorer quality and with lower scores or anything or something like that, but with very little changes to the rules to what the men are playing.
Mm.
Because as we saw with the NRLW, it took like 2-3 seasons, and the improvement in quality of skill, fitness, strength, performance, everything, it jumped through the roof.
Yeah.
Every year, immensely, hugely, every time. But if you put them on if you were to put them on smaller fields, had shorter, even shorter halves, played quarters, smaller ball, all that sort of stuff, you modified everything down too much.
Mm.
You don't get that opportunity for it to grow and expand as much as it needs to. And it does belittle the women playing the game. So I feel a bit more sympathy towards the women AFL players because they haven't really been given a huge amount of support from the AFL compared to the NRLW players.
And I think, and looking at it from the NRLW point of view, and we've talked about this before, that they're like the WNRL players, they're just footy players, man.
That's right, and that's how we look at them. Whereas in the AFLW, there's these girls can't play the game as good as us, and there's still that stigma there.
Whereas and look, I think if you went to an NRLW player, even in the very early days when they established that competition, and women's rugby league's been played for a while now in Australia, so it wasn't like it was the first competition ever. It was just that the players moved into the NRL section of the competition. I think if you'd said to them, do you want to use a smaller ball, smaller field and stuff, they would say, fuck off. Because they're footy players. They'd be like, what are you trying to do to us? We're not doing that,
It's condescending is what it is. And the NRL was smart to not fuck around with the formula too much at all for the women.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think for the AFLW, they did fuck around with it a lot.
Yeah.
And they never took it seriously. They didn't run they still don't run the competition when the men's one is on. They do it in the pre-season. So it's hard for them to get a huge amount of people watching the AFLW because everyone's watching cricket or they're not focused on AFL of any nature.
Yeah. I think one of the things that would help the NRLW is if they had a couple of time slots that you always knew there was with the women's games on then, whether it's and I don't know if you do midweek games or something, that's very difficult because a lot of NRLW players are not full-time professionals yet. So it makes midway games really difficult. But
I would have a women's magic round, but I'd have 3 of them. And they would be on the Origin weekends. Have no NRL games that weekend. Have NRLW games on the weekend instead.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, if say you had them at say Commonwealth Bank Stadium, Parramatta Stadium, maybe Gold Coast in Townsville or something. How many do you reckon they'd get at Suncorp though?
If you got all the women's teams playing there, you'd fill it.
I reckon.
Yeah, absolutely. If they've got no NRL to compete with, absolutely they'd fill it.
It's worth trying.
Absolutely. What's the worst that's going to happen?
Yeah.
So I'd do that. I'd make it a big event. I'd make it a major thing, and you'd be able to promote with the Origin.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck, that's brilliant.
We've got to do something with having standalone rep rounds. I think it's just that the game has matured to a point where it, State of Origin, you hold it Saturday night, hold it Sunday night, We've held it every single night. I think you were saying except for Monday. You could hold it wherever, and it's going to be gigantic and huge, and everyone's going to watch it and love it and talk about it and have stayed up for it.
Yeah.
We just need to fill in around that, and we've got plenty of content to fill in around that. As you say, have an NRLW day, have test matches with the Pacific Islands the other days. Yeah, plenty of content.
Absolutely do that. What are the stats we got here? Schools, clubs, and recreational was one I remember you mentioning.
Yeah, so I think that's okay. So
that's page 10.
Page 10. I think. Hang on, I've got to scroll right back up. I was at 18.
Yeah, bloke's in a hurry.
Yeah, that's what she said. Hang on, I'm getting to 10. My page 10 is talking about the Pacific Championship. State of Origin.
That sounds like a you problem and not a me problem.
It's just, I'll go back to the stats I was looking at before. Hang on.
Oh, okay, no, don't go by the page number on the actual report. The number on the PDF file.
On the way I'm looking at this, I don't get a number.
Okay, page 18 on the actual report.
That's the fucking page I was on, you bastard.
It's page 10 in the PDF.
Okay, page 18. Yeah, I was on that one. Okay, so record year for club participation. It says 201,845 registered participants in club rugby league competition, which is up 5%. And basically it breaks it down. So it says the highlights: club volunteers plus 9%. That's 76,860. Participants aged 5 to 12 years old, 88,942. That's up 3%. Teenage participants, 67,342. That's up by 7.5%. Female participants overall, 44,865, which is up 15%, which is a real growth area for the game. And participants in Victoria, 5,598, which is up 22%. Now that seems like it counts actual playing numbers at a club. That's pretty good in Victoria.
That's a lot higher than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know. Maybe it's just a campaign down here to try and get kids down here playing, because obviously there's not been many Victorians coming through the ranks since 1998, joining the Storm, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very small number. So maybe there's been a focus there. I'll tell you what, one thing I have noticed is no mention at all about the player numbers and the changes there in country Australia.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. That is a very good point. And that's... that
was always like the most important growth area for decades.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden we're not saying shit about it.
Yeah, and it was always a thing of like, and we've got this many people in the country, and it was like they would always boast about it. It's not here at all, is it?
And people think about it, okay? Country Rugby League, that's where legends of the game like Clive Churchill and Nigel Plum came from.
Mm-hmm.
We need the country.
I wonder if that's, like, I know people talk about the erosion of country rugby league. I feel like a lot of that is just the general eroding of just country life in Australia.
Yes and no. So
you'd know more about it than me because you lived it.
So with country areas, especially ones where I grew up, okay, they very much affiliate with whichever of their local teams, because they'll have teams playing all of the sports. But whichever of their local teams or their local code is the strongest and playing the best, that's the code we follow now.
Okay.
But as soon as it changes, we all jump to the other sport that's now doing better.
Yeah.
So Wagga Wagga is a good example. Throughout the 80s and 90s, it was just rugby league crazy. And then through the late 90s, early 2000s, rugby league started to fall behind and it became an AFL place.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to claim it back when another sport's jumped in there. And that's the problem you find, is that as soon as as soon as either code drops behind and the other one will come in and pick up the slack and take over, it's hard to get the mantle back. But when you do, you hold it for a while. But that's how these country areas work. And the southwestern and southeastern part of New South Wales was always like a very dominant rugby league stronghold. We're talking that area like south of Campbelltown, basically, including Canberra, but all the way down to, Albury, the Riverina, all those sort of regions. That was always like a massive rugby league area for a long time. I'm talking back in the like post-war days. But I'd be surprised if much of it still is pro rugby league over AFL. AFL's been smart in those areas, especially when they set up those teams in Sydney, Western Sydney, is they realise that they need to start getting some new, grassroots areas outside of Melbourne in New South Wales that can feed those clubs. And so obviously they went with Canberra and that southern part of New South Wales.
Yeah, and like it's interesting because like I've got experience of being in Canberra, and like the Raiders are still the top dog there basically when I was there, and the rugby union team didn't really hear anything about them. Like it was almost like the rugby union team there was more well known or had a bigger presence outside of Canberra than they actually did inside of Canberra. And every so often the AFL would turn up in Canberra and put on a show and then leave. And the Raiders, I mean, the Canberra Raiders are still getting lots of talent from southern New South Wales. You even see that this year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see, because I've never really thought about it before, and it's interesting talking to somebody that's actually lived through this. I can see where, like, you could get a few families moving into a small country area and they could completely change the sporting landscape in it just because they all like this sport or that sport. And all of a sudden this sport is going really well. So yeah, I've never thought about it that way. It's interesting hearing you talking about it that way.
All it'd take too is instead of having, and this is something the NRL could do, instead of having NRL players who are thinking about retiring, playing in France or England, take Luke Keary for example. Okay,
yeah,
pay for him to go and play for the Wagga Magpies.
Mm-hmm.
Look after you play down there. You're still in Australia, you still get paid well, but you're down there. And if we could have more and more NRL players playing their last 2 or 3 years of their careers in these regional areas, not just in New South Wales, Queensland as well, but doing that more often, it helps to get rugby league back up on top.
I wonder if that's something the Players Association could step in with and like make some sort of program where that becomes, where there's say like a grant.
It'd be tricky because you wouldn't be able to do it with just like one club in a group. You'd probably want it so that every club be able to do it, which is actually a good thing because then you've got more players going there.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of exemption on there so that every team can get one of these elite players, and they'd all have to be paid the same amount, so there's an even keel across the clubs.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I said. Like,
it wouldn't be hard to do.
I've got no idea about the payment system in country rugby league, right? But just say it was, I don't know, $2,500 grant or something like that. And it was just that was it. Like it didn't go up or down. It was just the same for everyone. And if you took that up as a former NRL player to go and play for a country rugby league team, but that was available to you as an incentive, because $2,500 to a former NRL player, that's money. That's an all right amount of money, even if they're on massive money. So. Yeah, so maybe something like that through the Players Association, because they've got an injection of money every year that they get from the NRL.
Yeah, plus you could have those players turn into coaches out there as well.
Yeah, that would be huge. That would be huge.
Massive for that game, but also help develop new coaches for the NRL instead of relying on Craig Bellamy to do it all.
Yeah, true. It makes you wonder about like, do we need the Raiders in Melbourne to have something that they do jointly, just literally geographically between one another? Like, I don't know if the best way to do it is to have an NRL game every year in, say, Albury or something like that, or an area that you would know better, maybe Wagga Wagga or something like that. Or if it's something that they need to have, their juniors or work together with junior development in that area, or maybe pool their junior development even through Victoria and, southern New South Wales. Maybe something like that is the way forward.
I think the Storm were trying to play trial games in Albury. But there was always some sort of drama somewhere, either from the local council or from the NRL or whatever reason. It just wasn't going ahead.
Oh, really?
But it's the sort of thing that needs to happen. And this year we've had the trial games going on, and I don't think any of them, or if some have, it wouldn't be many, have actually been played in country Australia.
Yeah.
They've all been played around Sydney.
Yeah. I have a feeling that they've become that's commercial decisions.
Well, yeah. Look, everyone who from the country, when City versus country got scrapped, a lot of people who were pro that game from the country areas, because they were the ones who were mostly behind it, were pretty much just saying that this is the start of the NRL pulling out of country rugby league entirely.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And slowly but surely they've done just that.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we talked a little bit about the NRL All-Star game in the last episode. Maybe the NRL All-Star game just for a little bit of a change. And that's what it's there for, city versus country.
You can't. Why not have both?
Yeah, that's a good point. We could have both.
I've always argued, because I think it needs to be country Australia versus city Australia, not just New South Wales.
Yes, 100%. And real country, as we've talked about before.
Yep.
Not this Gosford shit, not Newcastle, country.
No, that's exactly right. You can't have any houses with beach views, right?
100%.
You got beach views, you're not a country area.
Yeah. Like the Blue Mountains isn't country. I'm sorry. Over the Blue Mountains, yeah. Anything over the mountains,
yeah, fine.
That's country. I'll give you that. But yeah, like Wollongong is not the country.
No, God, no. God, no. No, nothing by the coastline.
No.
So that would be good. Imagine being able to get some rough nuts from rural Queensland and rural New South Wales all getting together and have some old rough nut from the country region talking about, these fucking city slickers think they're better than us. You go out there and fucking prove it wrong. And then just be murder on the field.
So you're not selling it good. That's the very last thing the NRL wants to see. Back to the bad old days where you get people like fucking taking off someone's head because they're the big star in Sydney.
That's exactly what the people of the country Australia want to see.
Yeah, I know.
Actually, you know what? Instead of having city versus country, why not have country versus England?
Because they'd smash England.
Yeah, but at least it's not NRL players getting smashed. See? It's a win.
That's a good point.
And then the whole nation can get behind the bushies.
You know what? That's actually a really good idea. I'm just thinking, like, you're playing the game in January. England over here, January heat.
Yeah, play it in Dubbo.
Yeah, we're playing it, and they run out. It's 36 degrees at 7 p.m. That'd be great.
40-minute halves too.
I'm all in on that. Yeah, 40-minute halves. Yeah, no fucking drink bottles at 20 minutes.
No.
It's a proper game.
Absolutely.
Doesn't count as an international, of course.
No.
But hello, Scoey. But yeah, that'd be good fun to watch, wouldn't it?
I'd love that. That would be amazing.
I feel like the England team would get their ass kicked.
Oh yeah, it'd be destruction. Make the English come over to the week before, so they've come from the snow into 40-degree heat.
And the other thing is too, like, yeah, you got NRL players, but it's like there'd be weird players in. It's like, wait a minute, Big Tino's a country player? What the fuck? Like weird players like that,
Oh yeah,
Isaiah,
yeah.
look, Isaiah Yo's a country player. You think of it like Isaiah Yo. I think Dylan Edwards is. Man, yeah, they'd destroy England. That'd be so good to watch. Oh, I want it.
There you go, mate. I'm just coming up with solutions today.
Because the thing is, like, as somebody that lives in the city versus country, like, it just, there was no motivation. I'm saying this as a supporter, like, what is it? Like, we beat the country team, like, cool. Whereas for the country, it's like, yeah, fuck those city slickers. Like, I understand the motivation there.
Mate, it's identical to the New South Wales Queensland thing.
Yeah.
Because Queensland went through the same situation as country did in the New South Wales city versus country games. That was constantly getting screwed out of their talent and having to rely on the talent that they had left over, getting constantly thrashed, and then having the people in Sydney decide whether these games are worthwhile or not because the opposition wasn't strong enough. It was like, they're not strong enough because you keep pinching all of our fucking players. That's why the passion within country New South Wales against City is so much higher than the other way around, and same for Queensland versus New South Wales. Yeah,
and as a Sydney person, I don't need a team. I'm cool. I'm cool to be out of it. Whereas the country, I would watch the country team. But I never, ever watched the city team, which was always Sydney. I never watched it. It was like, yeah, they're my guys. Like, it was just, I don't know.
No, that's right. But the country guys would always look at those guys in the maroon and gold going, yep, I'm going for the Maroons this time round.
Yeah, wanted to smash them. So yeah, I'd be happy with there'd been no Sydney team and it being like country versus England, or, I guess you could have country versus... You could probably have country versus Maori, I guess, although I don't know that there'd be much of a thing between those two teams.
I'd keep the Indigenous game. Just have, country Australia versus some international side.
Yeah.
Come try yourself, pal.
Well, you know what would be a really interesting game is country versus PNG. Just because, like, the PNG team fucking smash everyone. Doesn't matter who they're playing, they fuck you up. And, like, the country team is going to want to make a game of it, but, man, that would be brutal. That'd be so good to watch.
You could actually take the football away and they wouldn't even notice. They'd still just be out there whacking into each other. And you'd still watch.
Man, that'd be such a cool game to watch. Damn.
What else we got in this thing? Let's see. 777,900 participants in school activations, ball in hand programs. 2,983 school ambassadors. That's 100% increase on last year. Oh, can't I tell there's a dictator running that one?
I know you and me have both had opportunities where we could have worked within the game, and like, we're just not that sort of people. Like, that's never been our motivation. Even though we've done things here and there. The one thing I would love to do is the schools program. I think that'd be a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, it'll definitely be very interesting because you're starting with people who are absolutely keen on it, but probably don't have the skills and learning all the skills from scratch.
Yeah.
Seeing that development growth in how they play the game.
Yeah. And
that would always be fantastic.
And like, just sharing your passion for the game and your enjoyment of it. And like, yeah, I think that would be so much fun. Like the development officers, man, they must just have so much fun doing that. It must be so cool.
Absolutely. What else is on here?
The next page down, State League Report, which we looked at earlier. So it only has I don't know why they haven't got the other states there, but it's only got New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria here. So it says in New South Wales, 117,000 580 registered club participants, which is up 4%, which is nice, and it's an all-time high. In Queensland, 70,636, and that's registered club participants, which is also up 4% and an all-time high. And then you get to Victoria, and it says 42,123 participants across NRL school programs, competitions, and gala days. So that's sort of, they've taken a catch-all number there. And they don't give a growth percentage on that. But the New South Wales women's club participation has had 14% growth, which is great. It's been 13% growth in Queensland, which is great. 21% growth in Victoria, which is an all-time high for all of the states. And so that's awesome as well. 50% growth in Victoria for registered female club participants, which is brilliant. Any other big ones? There's no other huge numbers there that stand out.
Those Victorian numbers are crazy.
Yeah, but I guess, the numbers are starting off slow, but yeah, to get 50% growth that's massive. And, you just need those numbers a few years on end, and all of a sudden you've got real proper numbers that they don't need to pad out with their schools program. It's good. And that should have been happening for the last 20 years in Victoria.
Oh, well, absolutely. So, I mean, the Melbourne Storm were doing a lot of tremendous work up until they got their salary cap punishment, and they kind of had to roll a lot of that stuff back.
Yeah.
To my knowledge, because they just don't have the money to do it anymore. But there's never really been, up until feels like the last 12 months, by the sounds of things, any real sort of genuinely concerted effort to try and increase participation rates down here in Victoria.
Yeah.
And it's always going to be hard given how the market is really cornered to steering players into the AFL, but they had to do something. Like, if you're going to put an NRL team down here, you've got to make some sort of bloody effort.
Yeah, true. And I think the thing is that, the differences between, I think the mentality of people that play AFL and rugby league, they're just two different sorts of people because they're so different sports.
Oh, absolutely.
And we've talked about how rugby league is a weird sport. You get the whole idea is you tuck the ball under your arm and 13 other people want to drag you to the ground, and you want to do that over and over again all week, all day. But so I don't think they're going for the same people for the most part. Like, there's obviously going to be some crossover, just general athlete crossover, but I think for the most part they're just going for general people. But yeah, cracking through the just blanket AFL coverage down there in any way, the fact that they're getting these numbers is pretty damn good.
Absolutely.
I think the thing with the Storm is too, the Storm feel really entrenched. They don't feel like a outlet or anything. Like, they feel like a real entrenched rugby league club. And it's funnily enough, I think that all changed around their salary cap dramas, where people that were Storm supporters and people in Melbourne in general were just like, wait, this is our team they're talking about.
Yeah, and look, to be honest, I think the club was smart, pretty much made it like, oh, look, here's just another example of Sydney trying to fuck over Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And they really had that, what is it, mentality?
Siege mentality?
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
They really had that siege mentality about everything they were doing, and that's how they got the supporters in.
Yeah.
Which, why not? That's the way to do it.
Yeah, look, and something positive come out of it, which is good. But yeah, it's funny how that was kind of the moment that the Storm went from from a franchise to an actual club, which no, you never hear anyone anymore talking about Melbourne's place in the game or its future or what we're doing down there or stuff. They're just like the Broncos or whoever. They're just another club, which is cool.
Yeah, that's right.
Going down to, are you still good for time?
Yeah, man.
Okay, so going down a little bit, I'm on page 35 to the financial summaries, which this is some interesting shit here.
I was just going to quickly say something.
Okay.
They've got the retiring class of 2024 on there.
Yeah.
I was just curious as to why they've got Chris McQueen as a West Tigers player and Kevin Nguama as a Roosters one. They've been playing over in England for about 4 years.
Yeah, that's kind of weird, hey?
They've also got Nathan Peets as a Titans player. I think he retired. I think he left quite a while ago. And Dean Faray from Penrith.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Didn't have to attach the team to that, but you know.
Yeah.
Whatever floats your boat. Yeah, you're on the commercial partnerships, was it?
No, it's down to the financial summary on page 35.
Okay. I'm just going to look on the...
Because the commercial ones, it's more just like how advertisers that advertise through the NRL, like their numbers, basically. Which some of it's interesting and stuff, but it's not.
Well, one of them is the government partnerships.
Oh, I missed that part. I missed it.
The Australian government confirmed funding for a 10-year Pacific Rugby League partnership to support investment in grassroots pathways and elite rugby league in PNG, Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji.
Does it say what the monetary amount is for that?
No. There's no money values on any of that. Just, you know, this is something that's happened.
I touched on, and we won't say what it is, but I touched on in a DM with you and the Dean some stuff that a part of me wants to start researching and writing about it. And another part of me says, no, just be the dude that just purely talks about rugby league and don't get on anyone's radar.
So any moment now,
yes,
Freaky's going to disappear.
Yeah. It's like...
And my co-host will be American.
Yeah.
And it'll be called Redacted and Fergo and the Redacted.
Fergo and the Redacted. Oh, shit. Oh, that's funny. There is some, I've done a little, not very, 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 very early on, but I looked up some things and I was like, that's interesting. That's interesting. Who's funding that? That's interesting. Who's funding that? Their logos are right on a lot of websites at the bottom. But anyway, should we go to... Yeah, financials.
Let's do it.
So, in 2024, the total revenue for the game is $744,864,000. No, yeah. Did I get that? Yeah, I did.
Which is almost double what it was in 2015.
Yeah.
That was 374.
Yeah. And when you look at the growth over time, you can see the crazy difference what having the independent commission did to the game.
Yeah, there's a huge jump in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
Went up by 123 million in a year. Took a hit in 2020 due to COVID. But yeah, 2023 it jumped up by, 108 million?
Mm-hmm.
Just massive numbers.
It's gigantic. And that's why I like it. You can say what you like about the NRL administration. You can't argue with the results. Funds available for distribution, $537 million they distributed.
Which is almost triple what they had in 2015.
Yeah, crazy. So clubs and players got $382 million worth.
Which, yeah, again, it's 2.5 times what they had in 2015. It's crazy how much that's gone up.
States, affiliates, and international, $52 million. I guess most of that states and affiliates. I don't know the international component of that, what that would be.
That'd be, I'm assuming that's player payments for international games and, I don't know, costs of, is it cost or income? No, that's cost, isn't it?
No, that's the distribution, what they gave out.
Oh, right. Well, probably it would be a fee they've got to pay to the International Rugby League, I'd imagine.
Yeah. That's yeah. They spent $40 million on development, which is pretty good.
It's down on the year before.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I wonder why that is.
Down by nearly $1 million.
Yeah. And then it goes into the total distribution. So the surplus. So this is basically once all the bills are paid, how much money is left over? $62 million.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
It's amazing to see when you look through it. In 2015, it was $18.6 million deficit. Then it was $8.6 million, then $6.4. And in 2018, I'm wondering what they sold.
I think
revenue was up higher. So that might have been a TV rights deal.
I was about to say TV rights, yeah.
But they went from $6 million down to $50 million up.
Mm-hmm.
In 2019, they took a hit, lost half of it. 2020 lost $53 million. And then,
2020, how did they lose $53 million?
It was $28 million in 2019 in the positive, and then they're $24 million negative. So you add the two together, it's 53.6.
Yeah. So and that 2020, so the 2020 season they actually lost $24 million, but a lot of that would have been costs with COVID, and then they had to set up the bubble in Queensland, and the good thing was they had the money to spend on that they'd saved, so that was good.
Yeah. So yeah, balance sheet, total assets $402 million and liabilities $80 million. So the net assets $322 million.
It's man, all these numbers are staggering, hey?
It's big stuff.
Yeah. So what else have we got here? The $62 million surplus, though, that's the thing that gets me, because that gives you the scope to, you could even spend $20 million on whatever, and you've still got a giant surplus after that that's left. And that's really cool to me. You could spend, if they come out tomorrow and said, we are setting up a team in New Zealand, we are fully funding a second NRL team in New Zealand, they were fully funding, the money's there and it's not a problem. And no one's going to go, yeah, but, because there's still $40 million in surplus if they did that.
Yeah.
So that's really cool to see.
Yes. Just seeing the directors, I'm just very glad to see that Dr. Gary Weiss is still there.
Yes, with he's got 57 different watches still.
He's just my what do I call it? He's my inner animal.
Your inner animal.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean your spirit animal?
That's the one.
Yeah.
It is getting late. His spirit animal. That's what he is. I just like the fact he's got all the watches. I've got a few watches of my own.
Yes, you do.
I love his work. I love his hair.
You love his hair.
I love everything he does. I'm a huge fan of him. I'm not being sarcastic. I love everything he does. He's fantastic. I want to see him running the NRL, not Abdo. No one's going to take shit from this bloke.
No.
He's running on 35 different time zones.
Yeah.
This shit is going down no matter what. He's all over everything. I'm loving this bloke.
I'm just going through down the list. Statement of consolidated financial position. I'm just looking at the current assets, $294 million. Just trying to see if there's anything here that would be of any.
At the very end, it's got a member's guarantee. The company is a company limited by guarantee. The company constitution requires each member to contribute a maximum of $10 towards meeting any outstanding obligations of the company if the company is wound up. Number of members at year end is 27. Who are the members?
That'd be a good question, hey? And can we become members?
I want to become a member.
I'd chuck in $10 for it.
I'm here for that.
Yeah, I can afford $10.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then it gets into like real, like not a lot of the real intricate financial numbers that kind of aren't all that interesting.
That's just like investment costs and depreciation and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's like
A lot of it I've already touched on. Changes in equity. What have we got here?
Oh, what's this? The Consolidated Entity Disclosure Statement.
I don't know what that is.
So it's on page 63 as of October 2024. So entity name. So just interesting to see the different entity names and stuff, considering some of the stuff we looked up not too long ago about International Rugby League. Who owns what? Honestly, there's nothing here that's really that interesting. I thought there might have been something that jumped out. Independent auditor report. So yeah, that's the main parts of the, and then it ends with a Star Spangled Ball. So that's the main parts of the NRL's annual report. And like, was there anything that jumped out at you from it?
Not hugely. I think the participation rates and the investment in hours trying to get people involved in the game of Victoria was up pretty aggressively.
Yeah.
If they're going to make worthwhile on that, then they need to make sure those numbers are not so much the increased volume, but the numbers are maintained this year as well.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's been all for nothing. Like, it's just marketing is what it was in the long run if they don't keep with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it's not too bad. They've managed to reduce a lot of their expenses, so their expenses weren't as high, which is pretty good to do, especially in a year where we didn't have a TV rights deal, which has got to be coming up. Is it this year or next year? It's got to be one soon.
Yeah, I think they're about to start negotiating it. I think it's for 2027 from memory.
Oh, okay.
I think that's when the new one would probably kick in. But it's interesting because that TV deal is going to be worth a lot more. And when you look at the financial state the NRL's in right now, it makes you wonder like where the game's finances are going to be as that deal keeps humming along, what their surpluses will be and the different projects they'll be able to take part in with the extra money that they're going to be bringing in, because obviously the salary cap and the club grants will go up. Makes you wonder what the salary cap will be like. Will it just jump immediately to 15 million? Will it go up to like, could it double? Who knows?
I think they'll keep it modest until the PNG team comes in.
Yeah, I think that they'll give a modest jump in it, and it's like, I think that for the most part, the Players Association and stuff, they're going to be, because the players are so well paid at the moment, they're going to be happy with it, you know. And I think the thing with the Players Association, we've talked about this a little bit, they do understand that the game has needed to get on its feet financially, and it's there now.
Yep.
And they know that they don't want to bleed the game dry. Like the Players Association isn't looking at that $60 million surplus and saying, well, that should be ours. And it's good. It's a good place for the game to be in, that the Players Association has that outlook. So yeah, it's a really good place for the game to be in, which is really exciting.
Yeah, it's in a good spot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, speaking of good spots, should we put this one to bed?
I think so. It's been an interesting episode. We had a much bigger discussion about English Rugby League than I think we thought we would. And we got through the AGM, and the NRL starts this weekend with the Vegas games. And then we kick off the real footy season, I guess, after that. So it's a good time of the year.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And we'll catch you all next time.